Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of At the End of the Day. We haven't been on in a little bit, but we've been working on a few things, which I'll tell you about later. And to start off, I just want to say thank you for watching. My name is Derek Sanders. We have tonight Garrett Hassel from NorCal/Florida, and David Hastings from Tennessee, if you count that as a state. And we also have Jared Jackson from Kempsville chapter in Virginia, who won our contest for fidelity, to explain fidelity within 1 minute on a video. His video was great. It was a pretty good vote in favor of him, and he's now on the show with us. And I'd like to say before we start that all the opinions expressed on the show are those of the individual speaking and not reflective of DeMolay International. Now to go to Jared, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hey, I'm Jared Jackson from Kempsville chapter in Virginia. I'm the Virginia State Chaplain. I've been in DeMolay for a little over a year. And
How old are you?
And I'm 12.
12 years old. It's crazy. And what have you been to? Tell us the things that you've experienced in DeMolay.
I've been to New Jersey's convention. I've been to Keyman. I've been to May Talk and competed in some competitions. And I've been to some Virginia conclaves and traveled around.
Not only did he go to Maytalk, but he actually won 3 of the competitions. I believe it was 3. I'd like to brag because he's Virginian. So, now let's talk about the 7 precepts. Tonight we're focusing on each of the 7 and what they are, what they mean, how do we use them, why we teach them, why they're important to DeMolay, how we can express them in our daily lives, and is that the purpose of DeMolay, or does DeMolay have a different purpose, or is it multiple? And how DeMolay can teach those 7 precepts better outside of ritual. So to begin, I will give you the definition based on what DeMolay International has on their website. First is filial love, and we'll go each of these one at a time. Filial love, love for our parents and caregivers. Our parents / step-parents / guardians have provided love and care for us from the stages of infancy to the approaching years of manhood after high school. This lesson teaches us to understand the time and effort our parents have put into making sure we grow into respectful and moral young men. Now we'll go to David first. What do you think of that definition, and do you think it really tells somebody who doesn't know what DeMolay is what filial love means?
I believe it's a pretty good definition, but I believe it definitely leaves out one whole aspect. If you've read the Hi Dad book, you understand the whole, in the beginning, of why Dad Lance, known as Dad. Their story, the DeMolay's went to New York to initiate a bunch of guys, and Dad Lance said they could go tour a little bit, but they had to be back by a certain time. Well, he went looking for the boys, and none of them were there, and he got worried, and when he went outside, he saw them all in the back of a police paddy wagon, and he was flipping out, and the first thing he heard from the guys was, "Hi, Dad." And the story turns out to be these police who the DeMolay's known they were coming, so they thought, what's a better way to show them around the town and make sure they stay out of trouble other than the back of a police car. And so I think really for filial love, you also have to keep in mind, like, certain advisors, like there's some mom and dad advisors that are so close to you that really filial love should also include them. Like for example, my chapter dad, I've always been really close to him, and he's like a second, third father to me, and there's a lot of times he's bailed me out of problems I've been in. He's helped me solve problems. And so filial love, other than just your normal parents stuff, it could definitely count for your advisors also.
Now in Tennessee, second and third father, is that the same as like a half-brother and uncle, or? I'm kidding, of course. Now, the next one is reverence for sacred things. DeMolay International defines it on their website as, in the order of DeMolay, well, it's not technically defining it, but they're explaining it. In the Order of DeMolay, we encourage each member to develop his faith in God according to his own family traditions and personal beliefs. We do not tell members what to believe, only that it is important to believe and to rely upon the grace of a higher power. We expect our members to seek, to learn, to question, to trust, and to participate in worship with their family and their brothers. Because we value religious freedom and teach toleration, we ask our members to be open to learning about the beliefs of others in a respectful and supportive manner. Now, going to Garrett. What do you think about their definition of that, and what does reverence for sacred things mean to you?
I think the definition is pretty spot on. The thing I always learned that when I joined it was we pray, like when the chaplain goes to the altar and we pray and everything, like you don't have to pray to say Allah or God or whoever it could be. Like you can have your own special belief. And so I think that the definition of them saying as long as you respect anybody's belief, then that is perfectly okay. For me, whenever I met a new initiate, I would they'd always be like what God are we praying to? And I was just saying you're praying to your God, the one you believe in. It doesn't. And on one time, a kid said, "Oh, I don't believe in God." He's like, or I haven't found a reason to yet. Like nothing's happened. And so what I told him was okay, here in DeMolay, we're very open-minded about that stuff. All we ask is you don't have to pray or anything like that, but all we ask is that you're respectful, because that's the ultimate thing we're teaching here. Like some people just if you've noticed, in today's world, having faith and believing in a higher power isn't as big as it once was. Like how maybe back in the 80s, everyone would go to church on Sunday. Nowadays, not many people do that. So the point I just want to get at is, as long as you're respectful and you do believe in a higher power, or whether or not you don't, as long as you respect your brothers and their beliefs, that's all that really matters. Because when the chaplain goes to pray, you're saying the words, and when you say them, they have meaning. Even if you don't even if you say God bless Mother, God bless Father, God bless the purposes of DeMolay, Amen. Even if you're just saying them, they have meaning to you. Even if you don't believe in an all-powerful being, you could be you know what? The person I believe in is my dad. He is it's sort of to me, it's an open meaning of sorts. As long as you respect one another, that's all that matters.
A lot of times I hear that Catholics shouldn't be or aren't allowed to be demonized. And I've actually had a kid who was a really good friend of mine, great guy, lives in my neighborhood, and he wanted to join, and I wanted him to join, but his mother was a very strict Catholic, and she saw it as something that was against the church. It's not. And I later found, doing some research, that a group of DeMolay were going to the Vatican to actually speak with the Pope about it, and the Pope wasn't there, so they actually talked to one of the leading cardinals, and he sat there with DeMolay and with the members and stuff, and he praised them on what DeMolay was doing. Not because it was a belief in a God, but because it was tolerant of all religions. And it was exactly what that cardinal was focusing on, was the acceptance of all people of all religions and tolerating everybody else's beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what DeMolay does. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And if you look it up online about DeMolay going to the Vatican, you can read more about it.
Yeah.
They actually have the whole conversation recorded and written down, which is really cool.
Yeah, one thing that's always happened for me is I'll meet a great kid who's really outgoing and everything, but he's really religious, and then his parents are like, I don't know if this is the thing because it goes against what our church says, and I always okay, what does your church say? And then they're like, oh, how DeMolay's its own religion, how the Masons want to take over the world. Of course, it's always the Masons want to take over the world. That's the hot topic always. And I was like, all right, ma'am, I'm not going to try and argue with you or sway you in any way. All I ask is that come to one of our events, see what we do, and create your own opinions for yourself. So that way you know the full story. So that way it's not just hearing it on one side. Most of the time, they don't do it, they don't come to it because they're just stuck in their ways, and everyone has everyone has the right to do that or whatever. All I say is, like, give us a chance. Give us one chance to see that we actually like do good and we're not like a cult as everyone thinks we are, and that can make a whole difference just by seeing how like we're all good guys. Like we're not trying to take over the world just yet. Kidding, we're not trying to take over the
Funny you
world.
mention that because my family that came down from New Jersey to my conclave when I went out as state master counselor, um, they always, whenever we talked to them about it, said it was all, well, that stupid cult thing, whatever, and they did it just to mess with us because they know, like, people always call it a cult and stuff. And then they came down not really knowing what to expect, and they watched our ceremony at the installation of the new state master counselor and everything. And at the end, they're like, it definitely can't be a cult because you guys pray to God way too much. Uh, but now, what you talked about before about how it's sort of an open toleration thing, that goes right into the next one, which is courtesy. And so, Jared, I'm going to go to you. Courtesy is the basis of all human relationships. It is the simple life lesson to extend to others the same consideration we want to receive, to be dealt with fairly, to give and to be given common kindness. From the roots of courtesy, we can grow our relationships with respect, friendship, and love. What do you think about that definition, and what does courtesy mean to you?
I think that's a great definition because it goes into not just the grand scheme of things, but little things about being courteous. And what it means to me, what it kind of brings to mind, is that courtesy doing small things like the butterfly effect. You can do one thing for someone that can inspire them to do something, and it can be a growing cycle, and it can go back around, and it's just that doing nice things, it never really has a negative outcome. It's just nice to be nice.
And it talks about growing relationships with respect and friendship and love, and all those things, the toleration of religion, filial love, everything that we talk about, every DeMolay precept comes from the root of courtesy. Without courtesy, you couldn't have any of these. And so I do think it is a very important one, and they really nailed it with that one. Now the next one is comradeship. So we'll go back to David. Comradeship. Members of DeMolay share a common bond in the ideals we profess and the promises we make to each other to be better sons, better brothers, better young men in all that we do. As fraternal brothers in DeMolay, we support each other in our moments of triumph and despair. It has been said that once a DeMolay, always a DeMolay, meaning that our friendships will not end. Our commitment to each other is greater than that of casual friends, because we are pledged to be lifelong brothers, and will help each other as our time and resources permit. Now, comradeship is a key thing in DeMolay. It's what we are. We're brothers. What do you think about that definition, and what does comradeship mean to you?
I believe that's a great definition. I mean, comradeship is so broad, and it's so hard to really explain that one as a whole. And really, comradeship is something everyone should understand right away anyways. Comradeship is probably one of the most important things to me in DeMolay. I grew up with two sisters. I'm the middle child, so let's be honest, I needed a brother. Little did I know I was going to get millions of them. Really, if people were to see how DeMolay works, they would really understand what brotherhood is. I mean, we start by important part is when they see the play and the DeMolay degree, and they understand what brotherhood meant to them and how we're trying to continue it on. And then, really, brotherhood I saw on a local level was great, but really, what really shows you what brotherhood is when you go to DeMolay International and you meet your brothers. Like I met Garrett and Derek and Sepp and all of them, and it became such a great brotherhood more when I went to International. I got to meet everyone and everything, and you really start to understand it from there. If you look at Session the last couple of years, the brothers have really stuck together no matter what it was, no matter who they had to go against. Whenever they felt what was right for the order, they fought for their brothers no matter what. even if they didn't 100% agree with it. There was times, I know Derek and I didn't agree with some of the issues that got brought up, but we did what we knew was right for the brothers as a whole. Even though we know we had to vote against what we wanted, we knew we had to vote for the common good and the best of all the brothers. And, for example, show you how much brotherly love we have in our fraternity. Last night I made a post about Mason Sellers because he blew up my Facebook like he blew up Derek's and Garrett's and everybody else's, and talking about how awesome he was. Little did I know I'd have like 10 brothers all commenting, trying to make a 1,000 post thread on my page, and it was great being able to just hang out and goof off with brothers even on social media. So DeMolay, if out of all virtues really, brotherhood is probably the most exemplified virtue in DeMolay.
Actually, what you talked about there is something Jared talked about in his video about fidelity, which is funny because it was about doing what is right and everything. And one of the things I like about how they explained comradeship was that in DeMolay, the members share a common bond in the ideals we profess, and that's an extremely important thing. And comradeship is one of those ideals. And they talk about being better sons, better brothers, better young men. But it's also our 7 precepts, and they are very important to us. And we need to, as an organization and as members, express those ideals to the public a lot better and make it known that these ideals are what DeMolay stands for. So the next one is fidelity, and I'm going to go back to Jared since this was the video he did, and I'm going to explain to you what DeMolay International says is fidelity, and then I'd like you to explain it in your own words like you did in the video. So we teach the lessons of loyalty and the faithfulness through the example of Jacques DeMolay, and faithfulness, through the example of Jacques DeMolay, the hero and martyr who never betrayed the trust given to him by his brothers. The trust is the most important gift we can give to and receive from another. The trust of our parents, our friends, our employer must be earned by our reliable and constant behavior. A man who can be relied upon to fulfill his promises, if humanly possible, is valued and respected above all others. So, Jared, tell us what you think of fidelity, and tell us, go into your video a little bit and explain to us what fidelity means to you.
In my personal opinion, fidelity is one of the most important virtues, and what it means to me is doing the right thing, not just when people are looking, but also when people aren't looking, and doing the right thing even if it isn't the popular decision, like not bending to peer pressure. And fidelity is trusting, and it can be small or big, like when you're in school and you tell your friends a secret and you trust them. And in DeMolay, you trust all your brothers to keep the secrets that they were obligated to keep. And you can really tell them anything because they're someone that you can really rely upon, and you know they'll always be there for you.
Awesome. Now cleanness will go to Garrett. We believe in the ideal of cleanness in thought, word, and deed. It is easier said than done, and it takes practice and dedication to keep a clean body, a clean mind, and a clean heart. This virtue reminds us every day that we must consciously work to avoid the many opportunities to indulge in behavior that weakens us both physically and spiritually. We are striving to grow and mature, but we must not be hasty in our journey to manhood. Now, a lot of that sounds a lot like our ritual, just reworded a little bit, so it's not exactly our ritual, but what do you think of that definition, and what do you think of cleanness?
The main thing from that, like the main thing I get is it's easier said than done, which is definitely true. I don't know a single guy who has not like sort of bended it a little too much. Like cleanness in thought, word, and deed is very hard to do because we grow up in a civilization, in a world now where profanity and language and insults and everything is all around us. It like consumes the world. Like you go on social media, you see Drake talking smack on I don't even know who, Lil Wayne. We'll just say that. But like we see so much profanity and like in the music industry nowadays and everything like that. And so when like we're not supposed to give in to peer pressure and everything, but like we hear that and stuff, and then it rubs off on us. Just like how like you hang around a bad crowd, all that stuff will rub off on you. And so it's definitely a challenge to have to like make sure you're at your best. And everyone slips up. Like no one's perfect. Like the way they explain it on the website, like they make it sound a little too perfect than we actually are. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. But the thing I would say is for cleanness is to try your best, do the best you can. If you can avoid saying a hurtful word with something nice, instead of saying like, oh, hey, you totally, like, for example, you totally sucked at ritual at the competition or something like that, you could say something like, hey, man, you did great at the ritual competition this weekend, but hey, I hope that we can practice more so that way we get it better. Rather than putting them down and degrading them, you want to build them up. So cleanness is very something hard to do. And Indeed, it's a little easier. Like one example is like if you're not 21, don't drink. That's simple because like one against the law, and two like it's alcohol is a poison. You don't want that in your system. Also doing drugs, all that stuff. That stuff you can easily avoid and cancel out of your life. You don't need that stuff to live life and to be happy. You can just have a soda or like chew on some candy or something like that. Like they're childish examples, but you don't need all that stuff. The hardest part for me in cleanness is always thought and word. Deed is easier because you have morals and you know like doing something like that would be sort of a dirty move against someone. You know better than that. It's just the word because of the civilization we live in. And like when I was a 14-year-old DeMolay and I had a bunch of 18-year-olds around me, like you hear stuff and like it's all off of DeMolay time, but you still hear it and you're just like, okay, and you have to remind yourself like there's a time and place for talking like that. There's around your buddies. Like my mom would always say that there's that garbage talk. There's time and place for that. You don't say that around women and children and all that stuff. But like when you're with your buddies, you can do that all you want. But when you're around the public, you should not do that. And even in private, if you can avoid saying a bad word with just another word, you definitely should. Because I realize how like sometimes like I'll just like I won't always realize that, and then like I don't sound intelligent. I don't sound like a good guy with saying all this stuff. Like I really need to change it around. Like there's always a better way of saying something. Like that's why we do the whole think twice before speaking once. Like you should think, hey, what word am I saying? Oh, what word should I say? Okay, now I can say it. You gotta do that. You gotta go back to the basics.
That's actually exactly what I was gonna say. Was think twice before speaking once because it's a perfect example. We definitely don't do that enough. Now the last one is patriotism, and I'll take this one. To love your country is to love the ideals which bind your nation together. Patriotism is that inner feeling of pride and devotion to the history, the customs, the rule of law, and the people who share a common dream of a better life. DeMolay's lessons of patriotism is not all pomp and bluster, but that of thoughtful consideration of the need for a military presence in the world, as well as the creation and preservation of peace through the acts of good citizenship. Today we live in a world that is going crazy. You see people constantly now targeting police officers who are people who are supposed to keep us safe. And of course, not every police officer is going to be a good person. It's the same for every single occupation, every single part of life, every single country, state, wherever. There's always going to be the bad apple. But that doesn't mean the group of people are that way. And people like go against the police and say, oh, well, if this person shot somebody, well, obviously it has to be that he overreacted and just killed this innocent person. When that's not always the case, and they always jump to conclusions. Sometimes it is. But again, that's just going over an entire group when it's not indicative of the entire group. And to see those things where people are like burning the flag and everything, they have that right as an American, but is it the right thing to do? I don't think so. Having pride in your country is not a bad thing. But today we live in a world that, and in a country where being politically correct is a thing you have to do now, according to everybody else. But it's not. You can't say anything at all. You cannot open your mouth without offending at least one person. It won't happen. And so being politically correct is something I always have a problem with. There's being courteous, being kind, being clean in your thought, word, and deed, and then there's being politically correct. And they're two totally different things. Being politically correct doesn't exist. I think it's very important to have pride in your country, and I think they did a good job at defining it. Having pride in the history of your country and not ignoring it or trying to hide it or change it or erase it from the history books is important, because you need to teach the children what was done right, what was done wrong, and what they can do for the future. So erasing history also a stupid idea. Now, going back over all of these, why do we use them in DeMolay? Why these specific ones? Why not other ones? David, since you haven't talked recently, why do you think we use these, and why don't we have other things in here?
I could see us having other. There's a period. There was really a Christian re-enlightenment also, and so 7 is a holy number essentially. 7 is a good number, and so I can understand them sticking with 7. Plus, I don't want to memorize 20 different virtues that would go by with 20 different parts. Ritual would be way too long, and it'd be like masonry. You'd have to do 3 degrees, you know? And plus, if you think about it, masonry is 4 virtues: fortitude, prudence, temperance, and justice. And really, you expand on them just a little bit, you get R7. And then, really, a lot of it comes down to the time period when DeMolay was founded. We had just come out of the Second Great World War. First World War, and we're pretty much embracing getting ready for the second. And there's really a need for father figures for these young men and different things in the society of that time. If DeMolay had been founded nowadays, we may have just 3 virtues. It was really what type of virtues were needed for the young men at that time. And it helped the young men prepare for World War II and helped them to be still upstanding citizens, whether or not they served in our country or stayed at home and helped the soldiers by building the aircrafts, the different things. It really came down to DeMolay was founded during the right time with the right emphasis on what was needed at the time. So really the virtues are a reflection of that, and DeMolay has not had a major change yet where we needed to add or subtract virtues. I believe we found it on a great set of basis that pretty much covers the whole broad spectrum.
I think that's a great point, and it's kind of like the opposite of the Constitution. The Constitution is always evolving. These precepts are something that defines DeMolay, and I don't ever see them changing. But if you do research on the other organizations, like you said, Masonry and their 4 virtues, and OES and Job's Daughters and stuff, some of them are actually kind of hard to find because they don't state them explicitly. It's sort of just within their ritual. But most of them do state them explicitly, and they are close to each other. None of them are the exact same, but they all have their own way of saying the same thing. That this is how a good human being should be, because they should be courteous and kind and all these things. And it rounds out the perfect human being. Now, nobody is ever going to be perfect. Nobody's ever going to stand up to these the pedestal of each of these precepts, but it's important to strive for it, because there's only one perfect person I know, and God, of course. But there's no way we're going to be that. We just need to strive to work at it. Now, why are they important today? compared to back then? Because you talked about how it was started in 1919, which is why these things were very important time period. How are they important today? And we'll go to Garrett, and talk about that. Why are they important today?
I think they're important today because the world is so messed up. The world is in turmoil with constant warfare, the entertainment industry destroying any form of news outlet, and just, I don't know, the way people are being brought up now, it's not like it used to be like in the past. So I think they're more important now because we need something to grab onto. We need something to believe in, and when you can't believe in the people around you, like the virtues are something you can believe in. It's something to strive for. Because at the time, the boys needed it because like they had lost their fathers in the Great War, and so they had to like they needed that because they need something to believe in. I think we need it now because like we need something to believe in. Like even now, like I'm going through a lot of changes in my life, and I've been thinking about like how I want to be a better DeMolay, even though I'm a senior DeMolay now. Like I think about them, I'm just like, huh, like when was the last time I actually called my mom? When was like the last time I actually said a prayer? When was the last time like I did this, this, and this? And I think like it's something that's always there for you, whether or not you think about it. Like you'll always have the virtues there, whether you're past, present, or future DeMolay. And so it's just important to have because it gives you something to believe in and something to have faith in.
That is a perfect point, and that goes into my next question: is how we show them in our daily lives. Now, you said something where when was the last time I actually prayed? And I talked about that in one of my speeches to a lodge when I was invited to speak to them. It was, you always see on Facebook somebody's going through a hard time in their life, somebody's in the hospital, somebody's sick, somebody passed away that was close to them, whatever it may be. Everybody comments, "Oh, our thoughts and prayers are with you." But how many people actually pray? They say our thoughts and prayers are with you, and I'm sure their thoughts are with them in that second, but once they scroll to the next post on Facebook or turn off their computer or put down their phone or whatever, how many of them actually pray? And how many of them actually think about what that person is going through other than that second, or more deeply than, "Oh, that must suck"? Uh, it doesn't happen often, I'm sure. I know I don't do it as much as I should. But it is important to take these moments and use them to better yourself and pray. If when you're watching the news and you see something about something in your community that isn't right, get DeMolay to help with it. Patriotism. If you see an opportunity to make up a story and lie about something to get out of something, step up and be a man. Fidelity. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do in our daily lives to make these things better, and it's going to be hard at times, and it's going to be different than what you're used to because you're trying to be better and you're striving to be better, but you just have to do it in order to be a good person, or to show that your morals mean something to you and that you have character. And character is something that we don't really mention in DeMolay that much, but it goes back to what Jared said about fidelity and how it's what you do behind closed doors as well. That's the definition of character, what you do when nobody's looking. I think that's really important, and the best way to improve yourself with these 7 precepts is to build your character and do it when people aren't looking. Now, going to Jared, how do you think people can show them in their daily lives, and how do you show them in your daily life?
I think people can show the virtues in their daily lives. A big one people can show easily is courtesy, just by doing nice things for other people. And filial love, like Garrett said, just you can call your parents and tell them you love them and just talk to them from time to time. And you can pray. And patriotism, is a big one that I try and show, and that since before I was born in 9/11, America has never been at peace. We've always been fighting someone, and so you can just try and respect the people who are fighting and who help give us the freedom that we have here in America, and you can just try and really respect them and not take what you have for granted.
Now, one of the things that somebody mentioned to me was because we were talking about how important they are today and how people can show them. And you look at what it was back then and how it is now. I was watching TV of an old show the other day, and today everything on TV seems to be a majority of things on TV seem to be about sex and drugs and stuff like that. Back then, in the 60s at least, and in the 50s, transitioning to the 60s, they didn't talk about that stuff, but they did drink a lot. So they weren't perfect either, and it's never going to be perfect. But before that, it was shows like Andy Griffith and Leave It to Beaver and stuff that was really wholesome family that you don't really see as much. You see it within certain shows like Modern Family and stuff like that, but then there's also the side of today, which makes them popular. And today isn't that different from what it was back then. DeMolay was started because fathers weren't in the home, because a lot of them had died in the war. And today we have a lot of homes that are fatherless because of other reasons. A lot of homes that are motherless or parentless because of other reasons. And it's something, DeMolay is something that fits today perfectly. And it's needed today more than it ever was before, if not the same amount as in 1919. We just don't show it to the world in the right way. It's a lot harder because there are so many things we compete with, but we have so many resources we really need to utilize in order to show the world that DeMolay is today and now, and it's needed. Now, these 7 precepts, filial love, reverence for sacred things, courtesy, comradeship, fidelity, cleanness, and patriotism, are these the purpose of DeMolay, or is leadership the purpose of DeMolay, or mentoring, or what do you think? I'll go to David. What do you think is the purpose of DeMolay, and do you think these 7 precepts are the purpose?
I believe the purpose was explained pretty well in there. It's to make better men, better brothers, better sons, and better friends. I believe these are just the tools and aspects that are used in order to guide and to make us into and mold us into that better man. Leadership, I believe, though, is probably one of the greatest assets they give us. They give us the skills in public speaking and memorization and being a leader and knowing how to plan out events. These are all things that men in today's society need to know. Maybe back in the 1300s, I didn't need to know this. I didn't even need to know how to write. I just need to know how to farm. I mean, today's society demands leadership. And do you want to
Isn't
be
that
a
the
leader, or
same
do you want to be part of the flock?
Isn't that the same as today in Tennessee? You just need to know how to farm.
Slightly, but it's a lot different nowadays. I mean, keep in mind, we've had a couple great wars that have been fought, you know. So really, there is no real, DeMolay really is about leadership, though. They develop and they teach you how to do leadership. And I believe the 7 virtues are really there to help guide and to develop the man. But the real mission of DeMolay is to make better men, better sons, better brothers, and better friends.
What do you think about that, Garrett, about what he thinks, and what do you think about the purpose of DeMolay?
I joined DeMolay when I was 14 years old, and I was a chubby little kid. And throughout the years, my perspective on DeMolay has changed. Like when I first joined, I was like, "Hey, this is a great way to make friends." And so my first thought was the purpose of DeMolay was camaraderie, like coming together, finding friends, because like there could be that 13-year-old kid who in high school is bullied, but he comes to DeMolay, he has a million friends. So At first I thought it was about that. Then got older, started liking girls. Then I was like, know what? DeMolay's purpose is probably about meeting girls, but not really. And so that was the initial thought. I was like, okay, still about meeting friends. As I went up in the ranks and became divisional MC and then jurisdictional master counselor, I realized that the purpose of DeMolay is it is what David said and it is what the virtues are, but I think it's more about being there for someone, not necessarily like having to preach all the virtues, but you need to be there. Like my job was running the jurisdiction, but I could care less about me doing my job as I did one thing. If all I wanted to do was if I made the difference for one person, I did my job correctly, because there could be that kid who is on the verge of like suicide even because he's just like, life sucks, my parents don't like me, like school sucks, I have nothing left. But if I can make a difference in that life and make him feel like he has a reason to go on, then that's what matters. So I think DeMolay really is about being there for someone else. It's essentially being family. It's family. DeMolay is there for family. That's why the baseball team began, because they had no one else but each other. And so I think the purpose of DeMolay is to come together in the end and be there for one another. Because at the end of the day, the only people you have left are your brothers to help you out.
I think that's a great addition to what David said. And one of the reasons why I asked this is because I've sat down with some past state master counselors of Virginia before, and a couple of them ask why. Like, why do we do this? Why would I join Lodge? Why would I have a kid join DeMolay? Because can't he get the stuff somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
Why DeMolay? What makes it different? And I think the thing that makes it different are not only the building of leadership, but the 7 virtues that we take and hold so dearly to our hearts is something that defines DeMolay. Every organization that is mentoring youth and stuff is built on this. Big Brother, Boy Scouts, everything like that. It's built on these things, but we express them in our ritual, and we talk about them and stuff, but we don't do that much outside of it. And I want to go to you, Jared. How do you think we can teach it outside? And first of all, do you think these 7 precepts are the purpose, or is it leadership, or a combination, or what? And how do you think we can teach these outside of the chapter, or outside of our ritual, I should say?
I think that the purpose of DeMolay is to make better men for the future, to make kids and young men better adults, and to respect women and be kind and just better all around people. And that the 7 precepts just help guide you on your way. And when you go through the line, if you have a large enough chapter, sometimes you start at the first preceptor and you move up, and it's kind of symbolic of that. You start with 1 and you just build up until you finally get to master counselor, and then that's the point where you're like reflecting on your journey so far and seeing how all the other things you've done have helped make you the man you are. And I think we can help teach this outside our ritual in day-to-day lives. Just be kind to people, and you can tell your friends about it, and just live out what you've promised you would.
A saying that goes along with that is practice what you preach. And like, you look at any sport, you want to practice how you play, because if you practice just joking around and whatever, like whether it's soccer or football or whatever, and you don't really put that much effort into practice, it won't turn out well when it comes to the game time. And with a musical instrument, if you don't practice at home, I would know, because I played the saxophone in elementary school. I never practiced it once. When it came time to doing the recital, I fake the whole thing uh, because I didn't know what I was doing. And so it's really important to take the ritual seriously. And it's really important to translate that into your daily life and to take what you learn and actually put it to work in every day. Um, David, what do you think? How can DeMolay teach these 7 virtues outside of the ritual? And not only
I
to
believe the Leader's Resource Guide actually lists a bunch of these ways, and they're really great. I don't have an LRG with me. I think it's still in Memphis, but it lists a bunch of different ways. Like, yeah, that book, which apparently they're making a new one, which is great because it needs to be updated. I love that. Um, but it lists a bunch of different ideas, like hold a dinner mothers for Mother's Day in honor of your mothers. Do flower. Get a for my government day. Go spend the day at the state capitol for my government day. It gives you a bunch of different ideas on how to express the different virtues, and I believe that's great. But I believe the same problem in DeMolay is what the same problem is in Lodge. Our problem is DeMolay mainly does, and I know in a lot of areas, just as meetings, degrees, meetings, degrees, meetings, degrees. Maybe go out to lunch or dinner or something like that, or something extra. The problem is, and it's for the same way as Lodge, we need to start going out in the community again. Our organizations were never as great as when we were actually taking part in the community, which is what we're supposed to do. And I mean, if you look in the early 1900s, there was no government welfare. If anyone needed help, they either went to the church or the local Masonic building in order to get help, and the government didn't have to be involved. And really, Masonry started becoming less involved. The churches started becoming less involved. The government had to start becoming more involved. And then you start seeing the decline in our society and our government as a whole, because really we're supposed to be stewards of this great country and of our community, and sadly we're not doing our job. And I believe a lot of that is the problem is, if we really want to exemplify the virtues, we not only need to give back to DeMolay, but DeMolay needs to give back to the community, which will then in turn give back to DeMolay. And same thing can be said about Masonry. Masonry needs to get back in the community and be stewards of the community, and maybe the community will be stewards of Masonry, and they'll build. So it really goes hand in hand. You really have to be involved with the community doing things in order for both to really be successful and to grow. And for chance, we'll be able to now with all the police killings.
Yeah, so one of the things you were talking about going to do government stuff with to show the government and the public what DeMolay does, obligatory days, like our religious day and everything like that, where we go to a church and help out or do whatever. The obligatory days are great opportunities that you can do research on in the Leadership Resource Guide and DeMolay International's website and everything, and do something as a chapter to show the public what we stand for and to teach them the 7 virtues that we're supposed to be learning ourselves. And another thing you mentioned was going out and doing something. And our lodges and OES and stuff, they don't do that nearly as much as DeMolay or Job's Daughters or whatever. And the person who talked to me, the past state master counselor, who said why DeMolay and stuff, why Masonry. One of the things he didn't like about Masonry, but he loved about DeMolay, was the fact that we do so many fun things together, and we just go out and do things as friends. And he sees Lodge as just what you said, degree, meeting, degree, meeting. And a lot of DeMolay chapters are like that. And you'll ask them, like I asked somebody recently, what did you do after the meeting? And they said, well, nothing. I said, well, do you guys do anything after meetings, or do you do anything fun? And they say nothing. When my chapter dad for Occoquan chapter, past state master counselor, says after his DeMolay meetings, once they finished, they'd go downstairs and there would be a group of girls waiting, and one of them would be the chapter sweetheart or whatever, and they would all go out and have a good time. And there's a bowling alley a couple blocks down the street. They'd go do that. They'd go do whatever. But they had friends waiting that couldn't come to the meetings because they were girls, and they would do stuff together, and it was fun. Our chapter does stuff together that's fun. The lodges don't, but they need to. And I talk about in one of my speeches that I did for, I believe it was for OES, or no, it was I forget what it was for, but it was actually for a lodge that I talked about before. Same speech. What if a Masonic lodge was the community center for a neighborhood, where all the members in that neighborhood, like mine is right next to a couple stores, a fire department, and it's surrounded by a neighborhood. Well, what if the members of that neighborhood were involved with the lodge a lot more, and the lodge was sort of like a hangout place where we'd have barbecues and picnics and stuff like that, and just fun nights and parties and stuff. Why not? Why isn't the lodge the community center like that? It should be, and if it was, we'd have a lot more members. We'd have a lot better time than just meetings, ritual. And I think that's something to work on as a lodge, with the DeMolay chapter, getting involved with the lodge, with the whoever uses the building, and build it up into a community center in a way. Garrett, do you have any final thoughts about that, about what DeMolay can do outside of ritual to teach these 7 virtues?
The thing, like, they both pretty much covered it. Easy way is looking near the resource guide and just see like what days you can do, like obligatory days. That's a great way of getting out into the community and showing it. Another way is just like being who you are, from like what you've learned in DeMolay and how you act. Just like show that to the world, and eventually someone will ask, be like, "Hey, how are you such a good guy?" Or like for my mom, for example, like she would always like I'd be around like friends of hers, and I'd just be talking to them, and they'd be like your son, he's a really like all around good guy, like why is he like that? Like why does he seem to be like so quote unquote perfect or whatever, something like that. And she'd just be like, oh, it's from DeMolay, and then that's how they get interested. So just by acting the way you are and what you learn, you're pretty much preaching without having to shove it down their throats. Instead of being like, oh, filial love, bam, 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 courtesy, and all that stuff, you just show it through your actions, and eventually someone will ask, and then that's when you can go be like, this is what it is, this is how it is, and DeMolay's amazing, something like that. But one final thing that I just I've been wanting to get in, but I haven't found like a good place to like slide in at, is one question that we always got at DLC, our leadership camp in NorCal, was always, there were 7 cardinal virtues, we all know this, but if there could be an 8th one, what would it be? Like what? Like if there could be added on one more, because there could be a million virtues, but if you could just add on one more, like why? What would it be and why? Something like that.
Do you have an idea, or was there a popular one that was expressed?
I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. There's always been some of them, like bravery's always been one, how like even in tough times you have to be brave. There's always been one like excitement or enjoyment, like easy stuff like that. But for me, I think an 8th one, like for me, would have to be forgiveness. I think that would be a good one to have on there, because at the end of the day, people will make mistakes, people will do bad things, but sooner or later we have to forgive them for what they've done, because they know what they've done is bad, but it's our job as brothers and friends to say, we forgive you for this, and we know you'll change. So that's just mine. Forgiveness. I think that's a good one to have.
So I just want to finish this talking about precepts by reading a little bit of what DeMolay International put up under what we do. DeMolay provides an experience that creates bonds of friendship and an extended family that our members will never forget. It is not just a youth program, but rather a lifestyle that has sustained men, young and old, for nearly 100 years. The common thread that binds all the members and DeMolay chapters together are the beliefs that we agree upon and a shared value system that governs the way we try to live our daily lives. What follows is a description of those 7 cardinal virtues, 7 principles for a life well lived, that help round out and develop the character of every member. And I think that right there, I just took out the middle, explains it perfectly. How we're a family, how we're not just a youth program but a lifestyle, how these 7 precepts build you into a better person. And one of the things I didn't mention before about how it also says that it's lasted 100 years, and at that time, what we said before was that we finished World War I and we're going into World War II. And those kids who went into World War II, whose fathers went off to war, their fathers weren't gone from their life, but they were gone overseas, and they still needed that father figure, that male figure. And that's true today. We still have a lot of men and women who are off to war or dislocated from their families, not because they're not a part of their family, but because they're working to save freedom. And we need to worry about those kids as well and help them with a father and mother figure. Because we always say fatherly figure, but we also have female advisors, and we need to translate that motherly figure into the lives of these boys as well. I know the saddest thing to see in DeMolay's is when a boy picks up that white rose after the flower talk. And we focus a lot on the fatherly figure, but we should focus on both. And now to finish, I would just like to go back to Jared and ask you what made you join, and what motivates you and brings you back, and why did you submit for that video on fidelity?
I joined DeMolay because my brother is in, and I went to some of their events like walk-ins and stuff, and they were really nice people, and even though I didn't know many of them and they were all older than me, they didn't treat me any different. They still kind of just accepted me like I was a DeMolay already. And also, I have Masonic heritage, and my mom was a Joby. And what motivates me to stay in is that I really like it, and I have a lot of good friends in DeMolay, and friends that I've known outside of DeMolay, and DeMolay has brought us closer, and it's really fun, and I like to go to all like the leadership conferences and competitions and meet new people and have new experiences that I can't get anywhere else.
And also, the one you didn't answer is why did you submit that video of fidelity?
I submitted the video of fidelity because, as I said before, in my personal opinion, fidelity is one of the most important to me. Because to be a good person, you have to be trustworthy. You have to be someone that people can come to and they can tell you something and they know that you'll keep it to yourself and that they can always count on you to be there for them.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you for that, and thank you for being on the show. And I'll just finish by talking about a few things that were posted on DeMolay International site. The Grand Secretary and past Grand Master and Executive Officer Emeritus of Indiana, Dag Klein, went through some surgery on his leg, and so we hope he's doing better. And also Brother Charles Boyd of Edmund Burke Ball Chapter in Indiana was struck by a train a few days ago, and he went under surgery dealing with a collapsed lung and pressure in his skull and severe damage to his leg, and he's out of surgery and stable and resting in the ICU. I hope they put up another update soon so we know how he's doing. But we just like to say to both of you that our thoughts and real prayers are going out to you, and we hope that you do better and get better. And just at the end of the day, I really urge you guys to remember that DeMolay is a lifestyle, and we say I am a DeMolay, and we are DeMolay because it's not a youth group, not we are Boy Scout. Well, they say we are Boy Scouts because theirs is a lifestyle too, but DeMolay is a lifestyle, and it's based on these 7 invaluable precepts that we need to translate to society a lot stronger and a lot more. And it takes little efforts, like Jared was saying. The smallest things can make a difference in somebody's life. So Jared, to finish, give us the word of the day. Any word that you think is important.
Preceptors.
Preceptors. What a dork. All right. So the word is preceptors. So use that and talk in your chapter about what they mean to you and why they're important. And thank you again for watching at the end of the day.